Howdy, boys and girls, and welcome back to the first really, really big weekend of the 2018 college football season. I believe this is the fifth weekend.
It is.
Which means this is the fifth edition of the Carla and Crappy show for 2018. Hi, Carla. How are you doing?
I'm okay. Maybe we'll finally get the hang of this thing now. Or 5 weeks in.
5 weeks in, several years in, maybe.
Whatever.
Who knows? I know. We've got plenty of time. You appear to be dressed for a whiteout. Is that
I am dressed for a whiteout. Got the victory beads on and a white T-shirt. So yes, I am fully ready for a whiteout. And I see you are not dressed for a whiteout.
I was reminiscing about the last year's Ohio State Penn State game and that ungodly comeback. But that's a game that we can maybe mention towards the end of the show. Maybe
I have a couple thoughts.
Okay, I might have something as well. To start with, of course, before we look ahead, we look back. Do you have a just one thing from last weekend?
There's so many things that could be the one big thing from last weekend.
I know there was a ton of stuff last weekend.
Right. I mean, you could talk about the fact that Oregon take a knee.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that could be a thing, but we're going to talk about Stanford in a bit, so I'll save that. We could talk about Nebraska being nothing, and even the Wendy's Twitter account getting in on that.
Be patient, Nebraska fans. It's going to turn out okay.
Scott Frost is a good coach, and it's just a shame that his last name, you add a Y to the end, and it's a frozen treat from Wendy's, which they took great liberty to. So kudos to the Wendy's Twitter account. That was awesome. I'm sorry, Nebraska fans. That was, hang in there. It's going to be okay. Yeah, but I think the biggest thing is something that's actually it's kind of a trend. Because the top three teams in the country did what they were supposed to, and they won. Alabama, Clemson, and Georgia. But there's a trend this year, something that I think is kind of baffling to a lot of football traditionalists, and I'm using air quotes for those of you listening into the podcast right now. 2 quarterbacks. This is a really rare thing that you have the top 3 teams in the country are using a regular rotation of 2 quarterbacks and finding really strong success. That's also true with a team we're going to talk about this week, which is Notre Dame. And it's no longer true at Clemson, which is why my one big thing is actually something that happened today, which is the fact that Trevor Lawrence has been named the starter for this week. And so Kelly Bryant has said, as of just a couple of hours ago, that he is out the door. He is transferring from Clemson. And it's just an interesting thing that you have these teams that have 2 quarterbacks. It's working in Alabama. It's working at Georgia, although both of those are a little bit different circumstances. But this is a weird thing that we're seeing this year. But you have to wonder, with the way the transfer rules are, and the way quarterbacks play now, and the more physicality that is happening, is this a strategy for success? So far, it's working for Alabama and Georgia. It did work for Clemson. We'll find out what's going on with Notre Dame. But I like it. I think it's good to have a backup quarterback. I'm interested. I mean, you kind of lived that scenario 2 years ago at Ohio State.
Mm-hmm. And to an extent, there still are, and that's has largely to do with the competition so far this season. But Tate Martell has been playing a lot, and very different style than Dwayne Haskins. But it's fun to watch, and I can imagine scenarios where Tate Martell comes in a game that's a little bit tighter than say a game against Tulane, and that's enough of a curveball for opposing defenses that could work to Ohio State's advantage. I did notice, and this is not my one thing, but since you mentioned this, as I was researching stuff for the show today, there is already speculation. I had not seen this before. There is speculation about where Jalen Hurts is going to transfer to from Alabama this year. I don't think there's been anything about Jalen Hurts saying, "Hey, I'm out of here." But that is already a discussion, which I'm sure is going to make Nick Saban very, very happy to have to start answering those questions again.
Of course, yeah. So to tie my one big thing all together, Kelly Bryant go to Nebraska.
That would be interesting.
It would.
That would be really interesting, and I don't think Ohio State has to play Nebraska next year, so fine. I'm totally.
Kelly Bryant, go to Nebraska. It's a good fit. You got a good coach, and they've got a team that could really use some help.
Or Jalen Hurts, you could do that too. So whichever, one or the other, go help out the Cornhuskers and get a free Frosty maybe while you're out there.
What was your thing?
My one. I actually have 1.5 things. One that was only marginally related to college football, and by that I mean not at all. I was just in looking back at last weekend. I was I was wrong about almost everything that we talked about.
Yeah,
last weekend, but it was kind of nice. And I'm as the traditionalist that I am, especially with Michigan State. I think I was refreshed to see Sparty play like Sparty should play.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I should have made more clear when we were talking about Michigan State visiting Indiana. That if Michigan State plays up to its potential, if they play like they should, that should be a game that they win. I think they clearly established themselves to be the team we thought they might be. They're not on the level of Penn State and Ohio State in the Big Ten East, but that is still a very good team. And certainly, if I'm being pragmatic, that beating them down the line helps my cause. Not only with the win, but with strength of schedule and all of that other fun stuff. The other thing,
Uh-huh.
the half thing, I realized, and this was not really on the weekend. This was more on Thursday night after we taped last week. But maybe watching Sunday football might be sort of entertaining again.
That is true. I need to give you a cheers.
Thank you. I'm trying. I've been burned by this so many times since 1999. So I'm not ready to go out and buy Baker Mayfield jerseys. But I did on the basis of last week's game alone. I got Cleveland Browns socks. This is a huge step for me. This is a really, really big step for me. So,
but did you drink a Bud Light?
Hell no, I didn't. I had a 6-pack of Great Lakes Edmund Fitzgerald that I drank while I was watching that game on Thursday. So
yes,
no, please, no Bud Light. Can we let's put that away?
No. Cheers to your Browns, and I can say that as a Steelers fan because God, they looked abysmal last night in that win. It's gonna be a long season.
We will see. Yeah. Right now, the Steelers and the Browns are tied in the depths of the AFC North, which is just the weirdest thing ever.
Yes, it is.
But there is a literal crap ton of good college football this weekend. So let's stop talking about the NFL. We're going to start with AJ. We actually had too many games to talk about, so we said, AJ, please help us out with these 2 West Coast games. AJ, as he always does, jumped in, and he's going to handle 2 huge games and his traditional Pac-12 After Dark slot. AJ, go.
Hey there, sports fans. It's your buddy AJ. It's time for the Pac-12 After Dark report, mostly because there's some good games this week, specifically good games this week that you should definitely be watching. But I'm going to start on Friday, and by starting on Friday, I mean do not watch UCLA Colorado. Please don't watch that game. That game's going to be terrible. UCLA is not good. Chip Kelly has not brought any sort of fancy offense to them. He left it all in Oregon about 5-7 years ago. They're very bad. And as long as they continue to be this bad, it's just not happening for UCLA. So let's skip to Saturday, and we're going to start at noon with a game that I can't understand why it's at noon other than maybe spreading out the content. That's really all I can figure out. It's WVU at Texas Tech. Why make them play that game at noon? Nobody wants to be in daylight Lubbock. Give me nighttime Lubbock. I want it to be weird. This should be weird and fun. And it would be an incredible game if it were like the 7 p.m. slot or even like the 3:30 slot. Let's let it get weird. Don't. Let's get weird. Let's get fun. Let's throw for like 700 points. It'll be great. This game should not be at noon. It should be like 3:30, but it's at noon, so you should watch it. Do not watch anything from 2 to 6 o'clock. That entire slate is awful. Don't bother. It's going to be nice this weekend. Go outside, have a cider, find some sort of fall festival. Literally find anything, and go do that. So don't watch anything 2 to 6. But it's 7. At 7, we're back because it's Mountain West time. CBS Sports Network, 7 p.m. Boise State, Wyoming. I will always put on for Mountain West football. Boise State got whomped. They got absolutely whomped by Oklahoma State. So it'll be interesting to see how they bounce back. Wyoming, in their first year without Josh Allen, has been okay. They haven't been that bad, but this game is in Laramie, so the jerseys will be brown. The Murder Smurfs will be out in their full blues, and this should be a super fun game in a stadium that holds like 4,000 people. So you should watch that game just because it's fun. But flip back and forth, 7:30, BYU, Washington. Did you guys watch the Wisconsin game? Because there's a running back from BYU who you should be paying attention to, and BYU played at a normal time, so you might have seen him. His name is Squally Canada, and he is awesome. Squally Canada is amazing. He is a bowling ball running back. Super fun to watch. He is capable of breaking tackles and taking it the distance pretty much every single play. You should watch that game. Him versus the Washington defensive line is going to be super fun to watch. I'm super excited for that game. So let's talk about the best game, the 10:30 game, the correct and complete Pac-12 game. Pac-12 After Dark is here. It's Oregon Cal. This is three-base Pac-12 football. This is its purest and uncut form. It is stupid football. Oregon is going to Cal. They're going to throw for 400,000 yards. Oregon lost a heartbreaker. They should have won that game. They didn't. They had a lot of boneheaded mistakes. So I have a feeling they're going to want to take some of that out on Cal. Cal has actually played fairly well this year. They beat UNC, but who hasn't? Am I right? Sorry, Pitt. So you've got Oregon and Cal. They are two very offense-forward teams. Justin Herbert from Oregon is incredible, and you should watch him at all opportunities, especially this game. This game's going to go till like 2:30 in the morning because both teams are going to throw 45,000 times. So, drink some coffee, stay up late, and watch that game. And finally, it's 10:30 as well. It's USC Arizona. And you should only watch this game if you want to watch two coaches who have no idea what to do with their quarterbacks try yet again to figure it out. This has been your Pac-12 After Dark report. I'm your buddy AJ. Stay up late with me. See you then.
Thank you, Dr. Kuftick. We're a long way from being done because we're going to kind of speed round three games because obviously, I mean, we've hinted about this a lot. We want to spend election time on Ohio State, Penn State because that's what we do here. But there are three more games.
Yeah.
That and probably more that we're missing. I don't want to look at the schedule at this point. But there are three more that we wanted to touch on because there's a lot of good stuff. And we're going to start you off at noon. Number 12 West Virginia at number 25 Texas Tech. WVU is favored by 3.5, which is the typical, as we've mentioned in the past couple weeks, typical just kind of home field advantage right there, and that's about it. The fun note on this one, an over/under, I found one book that said 77.
Yeah.
What do you think about this one briefly?
Okay, first of all, take the over because these are two teams that like to play offense. I was talking to some of my kids in class this week because I have a bunch of sports writers in one of my classes, and I said, this is the defense optional bowl because it's going to be one heck of a shootout. My couple of notes on this game. Will Grier is playing like a man possessed right now. And I think he has legitimate reason to because he and his team believe that they can make the playoff. And after watching them the first couple of weeks, I'm in. If West Virginia can win the Big 12, I think they've got a shot to get into the playoffs. So they are. I mean, that's the reason why Will Grier came back this season was to go do something big with this team, and I think they have the potential to do that. Texas Tech stunned everybody last week by kind of knocking the socks off of Oklahoma State. So this is a Texas Tech team that also beat Houston, which, I mean, yeah, it's Houston, but Houston's a good football team. So Texas Tech has a couple of really nice wins. The key in this game comes down to defense and which defense is better, which is a crazy thing to say in an offensive shootout. But Texas Tech shut out Oklahoma State last week in the second half. But overall, the West Virginia defense has been much more consistent. So even though the ESPN Gamecast says it's a 66.4%, and this is on Wednesday night, 66.4% that Texas Tech wins this game, Mountaineers win.
That is so wrong, and it's Will Grier. I mean, if you're a Big Ten, if you're like old school Big Ten fan, and you enjoy watching defensive performances, as I do, just don't watch this. You're gonna have heartburn. You're gonna need a whole bottle of Tums, and maybe a couple strong drinks. There will be no defense in this game. Or if as you referenced, if there's just a little defense on the part of one team, and I think WVU has the advantage there. That's going to help out a whole bunch. But Will Grier, here I have his for September completion 100, just 1,100 over 1,100 yards passing, completion percentage of 75%, 14 touchdowns versus 3 picks. Quarterback rating for the month of a 215.8. It's just those are silly numbers. Those are silly numbers. And while Texas Tech can hang with that offensive pace for a bit, I think if the Mountaineers throw up enough speed bumps on defense, this is a win for them. Our next speed round game, the Karma Bowl. Florida at number 23, Mississippi State. This is at 6 p.m. Mississippi State is favored by 7, and no, the over-under is nowhere near 77 points. I didn't put it up, what it is, but I'm going to guess it's more like 20.
Right. Yeah, this could be a very low scoring. This could be a very low scoring affair. But the reason why we're talking about this game is, yes, Mississippi State is ranked. But obviously the connection here is this is the first time that Dan Mullen is returning to Starkville.
Yes.
And I will go on the record and say that Braden Gall, friend of the show, said a couple weeks ago that he thought this was the most intriguing matchup of the entire year in the SEC.
Tough to argue.
Simply because of how is Dan Mullen going to be received. You know what? The other than sharing a head coach, you know what these teams also have in common this year?
I have a guess.
Losses to Kentucky.
I wrote down in my notes, or we could call this a Karma Bowl, or maybe we can call it the Basketball Bowl.
The Basketball Bowl, or the Oops, we lost to Kentucky Bowl.
Because Kentucky usually wins those things. Right.
And my husband made the statement about the difference between these two teams is that Mississippi State is used to losing to Kentucky. I know he's also a Florida grad, so I'm caveating that. And he had fun last week at Braden's expense during the Florida-Tennessee game. But so here's the thing. The Florida defense is giving up almost as many yards as it gains. That's never a good thing. We are concerned continually about the Florida offense because, yes, they looked good last week about Tennessee, but a lot of that was Tennessee shooting itself in the foot.
5 turnovers? 6?
Yeah,
turnovers?
6 turnovers. We changed the channel after the 6th turnover to go watch Stanford, Oregon. So that's how bad that game got. Mississippi State defense is solid. In fact, they're better than solid. They rank 8th nationally.
Yep.
All of that, as long as Mississippi State can stay disciplined, because last week they didn't. They had 4 unsportsmanlike conduct penalties. That's something to be concerned about if you're a Bulldogs fan. They need to. This is going to be a highly charged emotional game. You cannot let that go to your head. As long as Mississippi State stays disciplined in this game, they beat their former head coach at home.
And you make a great point, because this I would look at this and think, because of the situation, because of the change in head coaches, that this will be a pretty fired up Mississippi Bulldogs team. If they are able to harness that a little bit and play with some discipline, that's going to be a huge advantage. That and all the damn cowbells. No, but you made. I think Mississippi State has an edge in consistent offensive numbers. Perhaps not in scoring, but this is a team that moves the ball fairly well. and then with a defensive edge against the Florida team that is wildly inconsistent. This is a win at home for the Bulldogs. Our third speed round game, and this is a huge matchup. Number 7 Stanford at number 8 Notre Dame. Notre Dame is favored by 5.5 points. What do you got?
Can we call this upset the apple cart weekend?
Sure.
Because I'm going to go. Shh, can I let you in on a secret?
Yeah.
I don't think Notre Dame is that good.
Oh, see, I had that in my notes. Damn it.
Notre Dame. Okay, so who's Notre Dame? Okay, Notre Dame had beat a Michigan team that we are very skeptical on, that we haven't seen play anybody legitimately.
And I get the sense if they played that now, there would be a different result for the game.
It's quite possible. Michigan's starting to find itself, but we have a Notre Dame team here that almost lost to Vandy, that only beat Ball State by a possession, and is struggling with 2 quarterbacks right now. They're in the 2 quarterback system, so they started Ian Book last week. And will Brandon Winbush play or will Ian Book play? Nobody's gonna say. It's the typical Brian Kelly just kind of pushing everything off. It's what the heck is going on in South Bend? No idea. Stanford stole a win last week from Oregon, and I mean they did. All Oregon had to do was take 2 knees and punt the ball, and they would have won that football game. And instead, they decided to try to close it out with a first down. And what were you thinking? Losing that game in overtime. Oh my gosh, what a mess that was. Stanford riding high because they just won a game that they shouldn't have won. They stole a game from underneath the Ducks. And they've got Bryce Love, and we've got a Notre Dame defense that is 62nd in rush defense.
Right.
Go Tree. Tree wins.
Go Tree. The reason this game is a huge deal is Notre Dame's schedule. When we looked at the beginning of the season, beyond this game, you see Virginia Tech, you see Florida State, you see USC, and you're like, okay, that's a rough schedule. But if you think back to results recent and just so far in the season, Virginia Tech, Florida State, USC, they are not what we would have expected at the beginning of the year.
We should have raised a glass to Old Dominion earlier this year. That should have been my one big thing. Cheers to Old Dominion.
If Notre Dame wins this game, there is an excellent chance that they run the table. And if they run the table, even with a schedule that kind of looks weaker by each passing week, don't kid yourself, they will be in the playoff.
Yeah.
Because they are Notre Dame. And that's and as we've talked in the show over the years, a name school like that, all other things being equal, a name school like that is going to get the nod every single time.
Yep.
Whether or not they deserve to be there. However, I think there's an excellent chance that the Tree upsets this game. In fact, I would be completely confident that Stanford wins this game had it not been for the fact that the Stanford's rushing game is a little shaky, which is another thing to say when Bryce Love is your tailback, because he's really good. I know that I'd read a couple things about the offensive line at Stanford saying, okay, we got to tweak some stuff and it's going to get better. This would be a good week for that to happen, and I think it could happen because Notre Dame's defense is not what I had been led to believe. So I think this is a tough game, particularly because it's on the road. But I'm going to go ahead and go with you, and because as I just heard somewhere, Notre Dame isn't actually as good as you think they are. Tree wins this game. Tree wins this game.
Tree.
Okay.
That's it, right? We're done?
Almost. Except for number 4, Ohio State. At number 7, Penn State. This game happens at 7:30. Ohio State is favored by the aforementioned 3.5 points. And worth noting for a Big Ten game, the over-unders is hovering at about 71, which actually feels it's a weird thing to say about a Big Ten game, but it actually feels about right. I'm gonna let you go first.
You're gonna let me go first, okay? Because and you're right. What you're saying about the over under, even though I think this is actually a take the under game. But the reason why the over under is that high is because you have the top 2 scoring defenses or scoring offenses. Excuse me, the top 2 scoring offenses in the country facing off against each other. Penn State is actually number 1 at the moment. So if you look at this game on paper. And I'm saying this, I'm putting my fan hat on for one of the rare times this season that I don't ever put you're looking at it, there's paper. For those of you listening, Crappy's holding up blank paper at the moment. Yeah, there you hear it. Okay. If you look at this game on paper as a Penn State fan, everything says Ohio State wins this game. Penn State
you're playing right into my plan.
Penn State has done what it did last year in 2017, which was the most obnoxious thing ever, and that is get off slow starts. Every single game this season that has been way too close for comfort in the first half, and then in every game except for the game against Appy State, they pulled away in the second half. That is a really dangerous strategy against an Ohio State team that, as you've said a couple of times, is probably one of the better offenses that the Buckeyes have put out on the field in a long time. And it's hard to argue that after watching them against TCU and in other games this season. That is something to have some serious concern about. I mean, heck, it was 21-17 at the half last week against Illinois. Illinois took the lead at one point in that game, and I actually tweeted that do we have a Big Ten after dark happening in Champaign?
Yes, you did. And I was thinking, I gotta go to bed. I want to stay up and watch this though.
Right. I wanted to go to bed too, but I couldn't because the game was too close. And then finally they pulled away in the fourth quarter. That is not a winning strategy against the Buckeyes. Penn State's offensive line, better than it's been in a long time, has a rush game. Has freed up Miles Sanders quite nicely. I mean, heck, he rushed for 200 yards last week in a game that was that close in the third quarter. The biggest question, and it's probably the most formidable offensive line that the Ohio State defense has faced this year. I think you can make that argument. The big question for Penn State in the trenches is whether or not linebacker U is back. And that's something that, I mean, it's weird watching as a Penn State fan. The fact that the linebacking core is not as strong as it usually is. And it's a defense that has some holes and that have been exploited. And I think you can argue that because of the way the teams that are inferior in talent have been able to manipulate this Nittany Lions defense in the first half to be able to stay, close or even too close in the case of Appy State. Late into these games. Penn State is only 35th in scoring defense and 45th in total defense, going up against an Ohio State team that ranks in the top 30 in both of those things. That's not a good situation. Ohio State's quarterback obviously is just ridiculous. Dwayne Haskins, I'll let you talk about him, but number 6 passing offense in the country causes concern if you're looking at this Penn State secondary that obviously has given up some pretty decent pass plays later this year. Like I said, everything points to an Ohio State win, which is exactly why I'm picking Penn State. Because
go ahead.
All I have to do is mention the word whiteout. You've been at a whiteout. You know what that environment is like. You've been to 2 whiteouts. Heck, the Penn State Creamery came out with an ice cream called Whiteout this week in honor of this. The last time...
What flavor was that? Would it just be vanilla?
It's vanilla, yes. The last time that Ohio State played at Beaver Stadium in a whiteout, need I mention number 2 Ohio State entering into Beaver Stadium and a 24-21 win by the Nittany Lions, which propelled them to a Big Ten championship later in the year. Everything in that game 2 years ago said that Ohio State was going to win that game. And Penn State won that game with a field goal at the end. Same thing is going to happen this year. In fact, I would even beg to argue that it's going to be the exact same score as it was in 2016. I'm going to go 24-21 for a second time for my Nittany Lions.
It's really funny that you started out the way you did. Because I've talked with Penn State people I work with this week, it seems like the whole conversation. This is probably we're just trying to be polite and not veer off into really serious trash talking. But it seems like we're spending a lot of time talking about why our respective teams are going to lose rather than why we think our teams are going to win. Which is and I can come up with many good reasons why Ohio State could lose this game. We're playing the only other team in the country that scores more than Ohio State does.
Yep.
We're lining up with an offense, or we're lining up against that offense with a linebacking core it's not your typical Ohio State linebackers. Our defensive line, we're missing our best player. Period. Nicky Bosa. Boom, best player on the defensive line. And I think a huge thing in this game, as good as Dwayne Haskins has been, experience at quarterback matters a lot. I mean, we saw that with Wisconsin a week ago.
Yeah, that's true.
With Alex Hornibrook in a really tough game against Iowa, and he didn't single-handedly win that game for them, but man, having an experienced quarterback in a tough environment like that works. Trace McSorley is probably the best quarterback in the league. And he actually doesn't have to face a tough environment. He has to face a tough team, but playing at home in this game, that is a huge advantage.
It is, especially in a whiteout.
And then environment. Dwayne Haskins has been lights out. But he has not, as a starter, he has not seen anything like this. So those are all things. Those are all things that work against my Buckeyes. However, even with the absence of Nicky Bosa, Ohio State's defensive line is still among the best in the country. They can, and I'm confident they can slow down a Penn State rushing game that feels like it's really found its footing. You weren't sure how that was going to go after you lose your all-world tailback. And the rushing game, especially last weekend, as you mentioned, it's very solid.
Yeah.
Ohio State has two tailbacks that would be welcome on to any team in the country, and they're rushing against the Penn State defense. You mentioned linebacker. And there are questions.
Yeah.
And Ohio State's had a very very consistent rushing game to go with a solid passing attack. And then there's Haskins, and I think he's the biggest variable here. You look at his experience, and this is his fifth game as a starter. It ain't much. He did, however, come into a game at Michigan in the second half last year. Didn't have to do a ton of work, but brought Ohio State back from a touchdown down to win that game. This is a tougher environment. There's absolutely no question. Michigan, it's another never discussed college football secret. Michigan's home field advantage really isn't. That's not a loud stadium. It is not an environment that frightens opposing teams. Penn State is. But Haskins has faced those tough, those pressure situations. And while I wouldn't expect him to roll up the same kind of numbers that he does against Rutgers, against Tulane, I think even just a good game is going to mean he's going to have time to throw. He's going to be able to complete passes to what is the best receivers group that Ohio State's had since Urban's been coached there. I think it's going to be higher scoring than you do. I would still probably take the under, but it's going to be close. And I think Ohio State leaves State College with a win. Boys and girls, you can watch the Carla and Crappy Show for the duration of the college football season by searching Carla and Crappy on YouTube or Facebook. And if you prefer to have Carla and Crappy in your skull, you'll find the podcast version at iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and TuneIn, as well as your favorite social channels. If you like the show, please rate and review. If you don't, mind your own damn business. Okay, Whiteout Lady, got any final thoughts?
First of all, to everybody listening or watching, follow the hashtag CNC show on Saturday, especially during the Penn State-Ohio State game, because I am guaranteeing at this point, regardless of the outcome of the game, we're going to be jawing at each other. So you don't want to miss that. Last thing, this is just a heck of a week for college football. Like you said, we had to pass some games off to AJ because we just flat out didn't have time to talk about them. Clear your schedule, sit on the couch all day, watch college football. A funny aside,
yes.
Another game that's happening this weekend,
yes,
that is like completely off of everybody's radar. And last year we probably would have talked about it first.
Okay.
Florida State, Louisville.
Who? I'm sorry.
Exactly. How the mighty have fallen. How things can change in a year. So that's why, and that's why we love this game, right? Is that things change that quickly. But I mean, top to bottom, even heck, that West Virginia game, West Virginia Texas Tech is at 11 a.m.
Watch that game. That's going to be fun.
It's great football from kick right after game day all the way through the end of the night. Even the Pac-12 after dark games are going to be fantastic because the Oregon game is Pac-12 after dark this week. So, enjoy the football. It's going to be a great weekend.
Enjoy the football, Carla. Cheers.
Cheers. May the best team win.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Go Big Ten. Guys, thank you very much for watching. We will be back next week with more college football fun. Have a great weekend.